It's official, the San Antonio Spurs have taken the highly anticipated Victor Wembanyama with the first overall pick of the draft. The 7'4" star is one of the most hyped basketball players of all time, and personally, I don't recall ever seeing this level of hype and excitement since LeBron was drafted in 2003. Now, if you're a San Antonio Spurs fan, then you're probably quite enthusiastic about this new acquisition. But history tells us that you might want to temper those expectations a bit, as first overall picks are a bit more of a crapshoot than you might think. Leading up to the selection of Wembanyama, there have been 76 first overall picks in league history, and surprisingly, only 45 of those have gone on to be NBA All-Stars. Furthermore, only 29 of those picks have ended up making at least 3 All-Star teams. And probably the most damning stat of them all is the fact that only 11 of those 76 first overall picks ended up winning a championship with the team that drafted them. I think this tells us 3 things. 1. Evaluating talent is hard. 2. Injuries can happen regardless of your talent. And 3. It's difficult to retain a franchise player when free agency arrives. Now here's the thing. That's just the unfortunate history of first overall picks in general. But when you get even more specific and look at first overall picks who were similar to Victor, things become even more telling. Throughout the decades, various big men have ruled the NBA, leaving a long-lasting imprint on the game of basketball. But there is certainly a sweet spot for those big men, as almost all of the greatest centers of all time were between the height of 6'10 and 7'2. Once you get past that, you head into the realm of really, really big men. In the history of the NBA, there have been 6 players who are at least 7'3" tall and were taken as one of the top 3 picks in the draft. Victor just became the 6th. Today, I want to take a quick look at the 5 other towering players, and I want to evaluate how their careers played out and see what that has to tell us about the trajectory of Wembanyama. First off, Ralph Sampson. This 7'4" phenom was taken with the first overall pick in the 1983 draft by the Houston Rockets. Sampson was actually extremely similar to Wembanyama. Not only was he the same height with nearly the exact same frame, but Sampson was also somewhat similar in playstyle, as he was someone who could handle the basketball and make a play for himself while having a comparable level of agility. With Akeem Olajuwon by his side, the sky was the limit for the Houston Rockets, and they even made it all the way to the NBA Finals in 1986. He was the Rookie of the Year, a perennial All-Star, and an All-Star Game MVP. At times, he looked like Superman, but his kryptonite was his bad back and knees, which became a constant reoccurring issue throughout his career. By the time he was 26, his decline had begun, and by the time he was 31, he had played his final game in the NBA. Next to arrive was Rick Smits. This 7'4" center was taken with the 2nd overall pick in the 1988 draft by the Indiana Pacers. Although Smits never had the superstar potential that Sampson had, he was a very solid and fundamentally sound player. He was a very reliable scorer in the post with solid footwork and an extremely efficient jump hook. His fundamentally sound talent allowed him to be an effective player in the NBA up until he played his final game at the age of 33. His career should have been longer, but Smits had significant nerve damage in his feet that started all the way back when he was a teenager. He had to undergo numerous surgeries, and if these issues had never labored him, he likely would have been even better during his basketball career. Next was Shawn Bradley. This 7'7" center was taken with the 2nd overall pick in the 1993 draft by the Philadelphia 76ers. Bradley never developed into the superstar that the scouts had hoped for. With that being said, it wouldn't be fair to call him a bust either, as he was a decent contributor and a solid shot blocker in the NBA. Throughout his first 6 seasons in the league, he averaged 3.4 blocks per game, and led the league overall in 1997. He was quite slow and lacked the post moves to be an elite player offensively. Like the others before him, Bradley didn't age very gracefully, and his bad knees and hips required surgery, and by the time he had just turned 33 years old, he had played his final game in the NBA. Next on the list is the 7'6" Yao Ming. who was taken with the first overall pick of the 2002 draft by the Houston Rockets. With the backing of an entire nation, Yao was extremely hyped heading into the NBA. It was completely justified, as he ended up being one of the most offensively skilled and smooth centers that the game has ever seen, as he was absolutely lethal from mid-range with his tremendous soft touch. In his career, Yao made 8 All-Star teams and 5 All-NBA teams. It wasn't all sunshine and rainbows for Yao though, as he was dealing with consistent major injuries of his own. It wasn't anything abnormal for a big man, as his bad knees and constantly fractured feet caused him to have numerous surgeries. At a certain point, it became too much for him to sustain, and at the young age of 30, Yao retired from the game of basketball. The final player on the list is the 7-foot 3-inch Thabeet, who was taken with the second overall pick in the 2009 draft by the Memphis Grizzlies. Unlike every other player on this list, there's very few positive things that I can say about this man's NBA career, as just about everyone recognizes Thabeet as one of the greatest busts in NBA history. Throughout his very short career in the NBA, he was constantly in and out of the D-League, and organizations came to the tough realization that he simply didn't have the skills to compete on the NBA level. Of the players on this list, he had the shortest career overall, which is surprising considering how he's the only player on the list whose career didn't end early because of an injury, but rather for simply not being good enough for the pro-level competition. At only the age of 26, he had played his final game in the NBA. Again, what I just recapped were the other players in NBA history who were at least 7 foot 3 inches tall and were selected with a top 3 pick in the draft. Only 3 out of these 5 players ended up being an NBA All-Star at least once in their career. Just 2 out of the 5 players ended up making it into the Basketball Hall of Fame. None of these players ever won an NBA championship ring. 4 out of these 5 players had their careers cut short due to an injury, and the one who didn't was such a bust in the league that he barely had any chance to cut his career short with an injury. And maybe the most devastating fact of them all is that none of these players went on to play in the NBA beyond the age of 33. Honestly, if I was a Spurs fan, I would be hoping for the best, but fully expecting the worst. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but it kind of blows my mind how everyone seems to be so immensely optimistic about this kid's future, because the writing is on the wall and the evidence is right here in front of us. Every basketball general manager fantasizes about the created 2K player, who is bigger and longer than everyone else and simply dominates the game like a man amongst boys. But history shows us that this is a pipe dream. Time and time again, this experiment has ended up being a failure, yet time and time again, organizations are willing to do it. Obviously, as a tremendous basketball fan, I'm rooting for this kid, as I would love to see him dominate the NBA for many years to come, and be the transcendent big who finally breaks the mold. But I've also been watching this game for quite a while, and because of that, I've reached the point of saying, I'll believe it when I see it. So what do you guys think? How do you see the career of Victor Wembanyama unfolding? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. Thanks for watching as always, make sure to like and subscribe for more basketball content, and I'll see you guys in the next video.